This presentation will cover logical fallacies in your writing. The objectives are to identify logical fallacies, understand the impact, apply knowledge, and use critical evaluations. At the end of this lesson, students will be able to accurately recognize and describe common logical fallacies, analyze written and spoken arguments to detect fallacies, and demonstrate improved argument skills by avoiding logical fallacies in their writing. It is important to recognize emotional manipulation in logical fallacies. Emotional manipulation often involves logical fallacies that distort reasoning and influence emotions to control or sway opinions. Recognizing these fallacies can help identify when the manipulation is occurring. Understanding how logical fallacies are used to manipulate emotions, readers can better recognize and resist emotional manipulation in arguments and discussions, and thus avoid them in their own writing. Recognizing emotional manipulation in an argument requires identifying appeals to emotions and biases. Here is an overview of 8 common logical fallacies. Logical fallacies are errors in reasoning that undermine the validity of an argument. They often arise from misrepresentations, assumptions, or irrelevant information, leading to conclusions that lack proper support and coherence. Recognizing logical fallacies is essential for effective critical thinking and sound arguments. Although there are many logical fallacies we could name, when we consider the definition, 8 types come to mind. 1. Slippery slope. 2. Post hoc ergo propter hoc. 3. False dilemma. 4. Hasty generalization. 5. Ad hominem attack. 6. Straw man. 7. Circular reasoning. And 8. Red herring. Let's take a look at each. A slippery slope argument asserts that a relatively small first step will inevitably lead to a chain of related events resulting in some significant, usually negative, effect. In other words, a minor action will lead to a chain of catastrophic events. This is manipulation using exaggerated consequences. In our first example, it states, if we allow students to redo their tests, soon they'll expect to redo every assignment, and eventually grades will become meaningless. Example 2. Legalizing marijuana will lead to the legalization of all drugs, resulting in widespread addiction and societal collapse. The post hoc ergo propter hoc. In this fallacy, it assumes that because one event followed another, the first event caused a second event. This is manipulation using faulty causation. Example 1. I wore my lucky socks and we won the game, so the lucky socks caused the victory. Example 2. The mayor took office and then crime rates increased, so the mayor's policies must be responsible for the crime spike. A false dilemma represents 2 options as the only possibilities when, in fact, more options exist. This is manipulation using oversimplification. Example 1. You're either with us or against us, ignoring any neutral or other position. Example 2. Either we ban all cars to stop pollution or we accept environmental destruction, overlooking other solutions like improving public transportation or promoting electric vehicles. Hasty generalizations. This fallacy involves making a broad generalization based on insufficient or biased evidence. A broad conclusion is drawn from a small sample size. This manipulation uses stereotyping. Example 1. My friend had a terrible experience with a mechanic, so all mechanics must be dishonest. Example 2. I saw a bad movie with that director, so all their movies must be bad. An ad hominem or personal attack occurs when an argument attacks a person's character or attributes instead of addressing the argument itself. This is manipulation using character attacks, insults, and guilt by association. Example 1. We shouldn't listen to his views on climate change because he has no scientific background. Example 2. Don't trust her opinion on policies. She's just a college dropout. A straw man argument misrepresents an opponent's argument to make it easier to attack or refute. This is manipulation using distortion. Example 1. Environmentalists care more about trees than people, oversimplifying the concern for environmental protection. Example 2. He wants to cut military spending, so he must want the country to be defenseless. Circular reasoning, or begging the question, occurs when the argument's conclusion is assumed in the reasoning or premise. This is manipulation using self-reference logic. Example 1. I'm trustworthy because I always tell the truth. Example 2. Reading is important because it's essential to learning, when the conclusion is the same as the premise. Finally, the red herring. A red herring introduces an irrelevant topic to divert attention from the main issue. This is manipulation using distraction. Example 1. Why worry about environmental issues when there are so many homeless people needing help? Example 2. The senator argues for tax reform, but what about his recent scandal, shifting focus away from the policy discussion? After review of the 8 common logical fallacies, you should have a good understanding of what they are and how to recognize emotional manipulation. You should be suspicious of writing that is overly sentimental, that cites alarming statistics and frightening anecdotes, that demoralizes others and identifies itself with revered authorities, uses potent symbols, or use emotionally loaded words. As readers, you should judge the writer's credibility. Writers try to persuade readers by presenting an image of themselves in their writing that will gain their readers' confidence. This image must be created indirectly through the arguments, language, and system of values and beliefs expressed or implied in the writing. Writers establish credibility in their writing in 3 ways. 1. By showing their knowledge of the subject. 2. By building common ground with the reader. And 3. By responding fairly to objections and opposing arguments. As a reader, you may not be an expert on a topic. You may need to conduct research to see what others say about a subject. You can also check the following. Check the credentials of the writer, their education and professional qualifications. Check for credibility of the publication, and check for reviews of the writer's work to determine if the writer is a respected authority. One way writers try to connect with their reader is through common ground approaches. Writers use reasoning on shared values, beliefs, and attitudes. Writers use language that includes their reader, like we, and qualify their assertions to keep from being too extreme. Readers should evaluate a writer's credibility based on the writer's knowledge, fairness, and ability to establish common ground. Writers reveal their character by how they handle opposing arguments and objections to their argument. As a reader, you should pay attention to how writers treat possible differences of opinion. Is the writer being fair? A writer who carefully considers and acknowledges opposing viewpoints demonstrates fairness. Be suspicious of those who ignore differences and pretend that everyone agrees with their point of view. When opposing views are presented, consider whether they have been distorted in any way. Ensure that challenges are treated fairly with sound reasoning and solid support. You should test the writer's tone. Do you think the writer is being fair toward the subject and to you as a reader? Now let's summarize the presentation. In this lesson, we explored how logical fallacies can be used to emotionally manipulate and undermine arguments. By understanding and recognizing these fallacies, including the slippery slope, post hoc, ergo propter hoc, false dilemma, hasty generalizations, ad hominem attacks, straw man, circular reasoning, and red herring, students can enhance their critical thinking skills and improve the quality of their arguments. Remember to focus on logic and evidence, question extreme positions, and seek clarity in discussions to effectively counter emotional manipulation. Test the writer's knowledge, look for common ground, and test for fairness in the text.